Our future is one of recurring pandemics and other disasters, both from old threats and new threats from developing technologies that will frequently generate collapse. Investment portfolios must be redesigned to fit with the age of pandemics and collapse. This briefing provides a quick overview of both the future of pandemic threats far worse than COVID-19 and how you need to adjust your investments to deal with this new age. COVID-19 is a relatively mild virus with a low lethality rate. Far worse viruses are out there, including avian flu with a 60% lethality rate, or a bioengineered virus a terrorist group or Iran or North Korea or even a single dedicated individual creates and then releases to spawn a pandemic far worse than coronavirus. I'm Dr. Drew Miller, Managing Director of Advanced Analysis Applications. This briefing reviews the growing likelihood of pandemics and other disasters that make economic and societal collapse increasingly more likely and frequent. We'll review some ways that you can add anti-fragile investments to your portfolio to deal with this age of pandemics and collapse. My qualifications are listed here. On all these slides, I'll flip through them rapidly. If you want to fully read a slide, you can pause the presentation. CRISPR and other bioengineering technology is enabling great advances in medicine, but like all new technologies, it will be misused. A bioengineered virus is the perfect weapon for a nation state like Iran or North Korea to release in the United States and then, as the reports emerge, close their borders as other nations will. If they have developed a vaccine before they release it, they have even less risk of suffering from a pandemic that starts in the United States and spreads around the world. Biotechnology is the greatest threat to mankind in history. It's not just nation states, but a small terrorist group, even one dedicated individual, that can create a contagious, highly lethal virus with both new technology and some low-tech means that have been demonstrated and published. Dr. Kurzweil, one of the most brilliant scientists of our era, served on our U.S. Army Science Advisory Group and warned that bioengineered pandemics could wipe out most of our species. Other experts have also testified before Congress and told government agencies that this technology will be misused, modifying avian flu or creating a new virus that could kill 1 billion directly, and via the loss of economic activity and loss of law and order, a collapse in society that could kill far more. Government-funded research was used to modify avian flu, not using advanced technology, but simple methods to make it transmissible between mammals, and this was published. So a single terrorist, a lunatic, even without biology skills, could develop a human-to-human transmissible form of deadly avian flu. It may not be a deliberate bioattack, but an accidental release of a new virus from a research lab or your neighbor playing with biotechnology in his garage. If you don't believe this, go to the website diybio.com, that's do-it-yourself bio, and you'll see how anyone, perhaps an angry biology student or an environmentalist who is mad at human overpopulation, destroying wildlife, and is manipulating DNA to design a virus to kill off most humans and save the planet. A pandemic with double-digit lethality, not 1% like COVID-19, will cause a collapse in both the economy and law and order. I've defined what I mean by collapse here. Many experts refer to severe pandemics and other collapse threats as existential threats, which is also defined here. Based on Katrina, London rioting, and other examples I'll cover later, the violence and lawlessness, inability of law enforcement to handle the crime will likely be much worse than the virus. Many people may die from collapse, more so than from the virus. In New York City, when the power went out years ago, they had massive looting and arson and attacks on police. An article I wrote, published in the American Interest Public Policy Journal, explained that we are entering the age of bioengineered pandemics and collapse. COVID-19 was probably not bioengineered, but a natural viral mutation, and we are lucky that it has a very low, just 1% lethality rate. But avian flu and bioengineered viruses will happen, and accidentally or deliberately released, these pandemics will have orders of magnitude more fatalities and massive disruption. Our future is one of recurring pandemics and other disasters from old threats like asteroids and supervolcano eruptions, and new threats from new technologies that will frequently generate collapse. Investment portfolios must be redesigned to fit with the age of pandemics and collapse. Our economy has become too complex, so outsourced, dependent on electricity and the internet, and worst of all, just-in-time delivery, that it's extremely fragile. prone to quick breakdown if there are any disturbances. A pandemic, loss of electricity, trade disruption, cyber attacks that take down the internet or utilities. Our just-in-time delivery economy, with daily food shipments in cities and dependent populations, are very vulnerable to collapse. And when there is even a threat of loss of food shipments, people will panic, looting can break out, and law and order can quickly collapse. As we'll show you later in this briefing, you need to start evaluating companies you invest in based on how they can survive a pandemic, loss of the electric system or internet, and loss of law and order. Whatever the trigger event that causes the disaster, a company, even if it can operate, must also consider lawlessness, lack of security when police are overwhelmed or have quit their jobs because the threats are too high. We saw this in Katrina and have had many other warnings of how society can quickly break down. 4 nights of unprovoked, inexplicable violence erupted in the United Kingdom in 2011, spread by social media and opportunistic looting and lawlessness, including murders of businessmen trying to protect their businesses and attacks on police stations. There was no trigger event. The violence just started in London, spread to other cities, and continued for 4 nights until a surge in reserve police forces restored order. The unstoppable trends in our economy and society are new technologies that can be used for bad as well as good, ever increasing overpopulation, a more complex, interdependent, just in time economy that is highly vulnerable to long distance shipments, combined with less personal resilience and more bad people, including 1 million gang members in the United States and millions more in every other country around the world. The destructive power of individuals continues to skyrocket, whether it's developing and releasing a deadly virus that kills millions or billions, executing a cyber attack that takes down the electric grid, or sabotaging your product to make a fortune on put options. Individuals have unprecedented power to cause destruction and damage that took a large group or nation state in the past, and it's far easier to disrupt and cripple our modern, integrated, complex, dependent, fragile economy than a local agricultural-based economy. When you evaluate a company for investment, you need to consider their resilience, their fragility, their ability to function during a collapse, not just their profitability in good times. My consulting firm, Advanced Analysis Applications, has the experience and methodology to assess a company's fragility. Many of the principles we use are from Nassim Taleb's excellent books, including The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable, and his follow-on book, Anti-Fragile. Most investors ignore or fail to properly consider the risks of how a company will be able to perform or survive in the event of a full range of business disruptions, including major disasters and collapse situations. We make a lot of thinking errors and fail to counteract biases that lead to wishful thinking and poor analysis. The intelligence community is much better at assessing risks and black swan events than businessmen and investors, so we also draw on some analysis techniques used by intelligence analysts. Again, I'm going through these slides quickly. Pause if you want to study the details. Many studies have shown how people are really not very good at applying statistics, and supposedly professional investment analysts routinely assume normal distributions and ignore issues they don't have data on, wrongly assuming that because it has happened before or happened at some incalculable low rate, it's safe to ignore. Most black swan events are very predictable, or at least anticipatable. People wrongly conclude that since you can't statistically predict a black swan event, it's pointless to try and look for them or try to roughly estimate or guesstimate their likelihood. Taleb does indeed try to anticipate and predict black swan events, as I'll show you, and he makes a lot of money doing this. The worst error people make in interpreting the black swan is in thinking that black swan risks are low. A risk that is not computable can be very foreseeable, even somewhat predictable. You often can roughly, subjectively estimate a range of likelihoods. You just can't calculate a point probability. There's insufficient data. In our assessment of anti-fragile investments, we do consider all foreseeable risks with the methodology that helps avoid ignoring issues or optimistic assumptions, drawing from techniques from the Black Swan and Anti-Fragile, the intelligence community, and some hedge funds that do a good job of rigorous assessments. Investors need to be looking for, anticipating, and working to mitigate the impacts of pending black swans, not acting like they are unforeseeable, low probability events. Don't use optimistic assumptions. Consider the most destructive challenges as well. This is a kind of analysis that we do for investors. We use multi-criteria decision analysis to consider the full range of risks and scenarios, with sensitivity analysis to look at how investment performance will change based on different scenarios, assumptions, and estimates of probability. Multi-criteria decision analysis is also very useful in clearly laying out all the issues and assessments made so other analysts and reviewers can disagree and challenge ratings, allowing more sensitivity analysis and more confidence in a sound assessment. Taleb has made a fortune with his anti-fragile investment strategies. Since most investors don't think critically, don't look for black swan events, and ignore warnings that they are pending, investors that are watching, anticipating, and preparing can invest to profit from disasters. Most investments should be long-term, but there will also be opportunities to short companies that are particularly vulnerable to the trigger event or a long-term collapse. There are a lot of options, but you need to be working now to redesign your investment portfolio to fit with pandemics and the age of collapse. Through Schwab and other brokerages, most investors can buy puts on public company stock to profit from an anticipated drop in their stock price. You have to do your research and analysis in advance and be quick on your timing to execute, but put options can be very lucrative anti-fragile investments to profit as a trigger event looms that you've been waiting and watching for. Another anti-fragile investment option is to invest in the burgeoning prepper or survival industry. If you've got a few million to buy a survival condo, these luxury rooms inside former ICBM silos offer fantastic protection and great comfort, and not just your private condo, but swimming pool, indoor climbing walls, theater rooms, as well as diesel generators, windmills, stockpiled food, and aquaponics to grow plants. The supply is very limited, so you could buy a survival condo, use it to keep your family alive, or sell it during a future crisis to another rich person desperate to get in. Prepper and survival companies used to be dismissed as silly, but COVID-19 has changed the public view of prepping. Fortitude Ranch is a much less expensive survival option for the middle class, with the added advantage of dual purpose. It's a recreational and vacation facility in good times and a survival community to keep you alive in a collapse. Fortitude Ranch is doing a private equity offering now for accredited investors. A big advantage of investing in Fortitude Ranch is that they also offer some free memberships to investors, so you can not only get a good anti-fragile investment, but help save your life. 11 things you need to survive a pandemic or other major disaster are listed here, and compared to trying to do it yourself in your house in a city, suburb, or rural area, or using a backyard shelter you install that a dozen companies offer to Fortitude Ranch and Survival Condo. Mount Weather is the government facility for top federal officials. The commercial survival options offer vastly better odds and conditions of surviving, even luxury for survival condo owners. As more people become aware of the ongoing pandemic threat and new sources of disaster from technology advances, these businesses will be booming. Gold is a traditional investment people turn to in times of disaster and great uncertainty in financial markets, and the gold price has risen along with COVID-19 concerns. Over the past few years, crypto assets have become a new class of investment many believe adds to diversification, with some cryptocurrencies claiming that they may be more valuable in a collapse. Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme, as JP Morgan's CEO claimed. It's a valuable and reliable means of paying people around the world and has evolved into a kind of digital gold, a source of value if traditional fiat currencies and economies fail. Bitcoin does not have the real value of gold, but like gold and diamonds, Bitcoin's value is based to a large extent on subjective and arguably irrational appeals, as are art investments. Bitcoin has been damaged by excessive hype, and there's little evidence that its value rises in times of economic collapse. Some preppers have promoted Bitcoin as a good collapse investment, but there are other blockchain and digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, that are far better than Bitcoin for business applications and may also be better as a store of value. The 2017 initial coin offering craze generated a lot of foolish and some fraudulent ICOs, but many were not just legitimate but quite successful, yielding ROIs in the thousands of percent. Most of these ICOs were done on the Ethereum blockchain, a public blockchain that's far faster and better than Bitcoin. The regulatory risks of ICOs can be avoided by using or investing in utility tokens that, unlike Bitcoin, offer real value and use and not any profit sharing or equity features. Fortitude Ranch did an ICO issuing cryptocurrency utility tokens that can be used to buy membership in Fortitude Ranch. They were designed with some great value features that also yield big upside potential. The coins can be used to buy membership and let you both lock in a price to join, since the Fortitude utility price to join never goes up, while cash prices to join do rise. And more important, if you are buying membership with tokens, you get priority to join over cash buyers when waitlists form. Periodically, world crises and major news reports on threats will spike demand for Fortitude Ranch membership. Since Fortitude tokens give you priority to join when waitlists form, people desperate to save their family may bid up the price of Fortitudes. As investors realize this upside price potential, the premiums for Fortitude should rise over time. While most Fortitude tokens were purchased by preppers planning to join Fortitude Ranch, some are buying them as a great anti-fragile investment that will likely surge in value when the stock market is tanking and a crisis looms. Our conclusion is that many more and far worse pandemics and other disaster collapse situations are inevitable. It's just a question of which ones will hit first, how bad and long lasting they'll be. You need to add anti-fragile investments to your portfolio. For more information on the topics presented here, the anti-fragile investment opportunities highlighted, or to engage advanced analysis applications for a study, please contact us at the email address shown here. We do have some anti-fragile investment webinars coming up, and if you contact us, we can notify you if you'd like to watch them and ask some questions. We are, of course, also available for private consultations.